Unit 7 terms to know. Deduction. Antecedent. The antecedent is the first part of a conditional if-then statement. Belief bias. A cognitive bias in which people find it easier to evaluate believable statements as being valid and non-believable statements as being invalid. Categorical syllogism. A syllogism is a formal statement in which several premises, for example, all A's are B, all C's are B, are followed by a conclusion. Card selection task, also known as the Wason card selection task. This is a cognitive test in which people evaluate conditional statements about what appears on one side or the other of 4 cards. For example, if there is a vowel on one side of the card, there is an even number on the other. Then they test this statement by indicating which cards to turn over to evaluate the validity of the statement. Classical reasoning, also known as categorical reasoning. Classical reasoning involves arriving at a conclusion about a class or category of things, or arriving at a conclusion about a particular thing as a result of that thing being a member of a class or category. Conditional reasoning. Conditional reasoning, often expressed with if-then statements, involves arriving at conclusions when certain conditions are met or not met. Conclusion. In a deductive syllogism or argument, the conclusion is the final statement or the deduction that is being drawn. Confirmation bias. A cognitive bias in which people tend to seek out or prefer evidence that confirms a statement and ignore or downplay evidence that could disconfirm. Consequent. The consequent is the second part of a conditional reasoning if-then statement. Deontic selection task, a variation on the Wason card selection task, in which the statements deal with permission, what may happen, rather than more abstract premises. People are much less likely to show confirmation bias in a deontic selection task. Facts. In a syllogism or argument, facts are the units that make up a premise. Facts are statements that can be true or false. Fundamental paradox of rationality. A paradox described by John Lard, describing how rationality should be a necessary condition for correct decision-making and should be a hallmark of formal, mature thinking, but most people do not employ rational thinking and still make accurate and adaptive decisions and judgments. Modus ponens, valid. A form of conditional reasoning that is also known as affirming the antecedent, in which one premise introduces an if-then statement, and the second premise confirms the antecedent, the if statement, allowing a valid decision to be made about the consequent, the then statement. Modus tollens, valid. A form of conditional reasoning that is also known as denying the consequent, in which one premise introduces an if-then statement, and the second premise denies the consequent, the then statement, allowing a valid decision to be made about the antecedent, the if statement, that it doesn't occur. Operators. These are the terms in an argument like if, then, not, some, all, therefore, that combine facts, premises, and conclusions into a deductive argument. Particular affirmative. A categorical premise in the form of some A's are B's. Particular negative, a categorical premise in the form of some A's are not B's. Premise. A premise is a combination of facts and operators that makes a statement of fact about something. Premises can lead to a conclusion, and the combination of premises and conclusion is an argument. Sound argument. A sound argument is one that is valid and for which the premises are known to be true. Universal affirmative. A categorical premise in the form of all A's are B's. Universal negative, a categorical premise in the form of no A's are B's. Valid argument. A valid argument is one for which the stated premises lead to one and only one conclusion.